Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Be Well Emerging Law Voices series. In central London, we're very happy here to host together with us Dr. Riccardo Vecellio Segate, who comes to us from the Alan Turing Institute. And Dr. Segate specializes in artificial intelligence, and he will tell us more about his specialization and his work in the Institute. But for the time being, I would like to ask you, Riccardo, we speak a lot about artificial intelligence and about the challenges that artificial intelligence also presents. And many people have compared between artificial intelligence and nuclear weapons, meaning that we should maybe restrict artificial intelligence the same way we have restricted the usage of nuclear weapons. What is your opinion about this?
Well, thanks for having me. Well, at the time of nuclear weapons, I guess we were more at a time of also legal experimentation, in the sense that many legal frameworks internationally just started then to be defined, and questions of legality versus no legality needed to be tested on the ground, and only afterwards, the whole discourse on human rights, for example, took vigor. When it comes to artificial intelligence, the issue is that it sort of comes at a time when legal frameworks generally are extremely well defined. There is a lot of human rights law in place. There is probably even over-regulation in some areas of law and technology. And we are not, also as an international community, in the position of experimenting too much on the people, if I want to put it that way. Also, when it comes to life-threatening situations or even extinction of these sort of things, nuclear weapons were dropped at a time when those extreme acts of violence were somehow maybe not acceptable, but accepted by a number of actors. Today, we are more on the preventative foot. So we tend to want to know what's going to happen with that technology before deploying. The problem with artificial intelligence is that it is probably not even possible to know exactly how it's going to work in practice and always. Algorithms, especially with deep learning and etc., they always retain an area of penumbra in such a way.
The fact that we don't know how it's going to work in practice isn't an additional reason for us to be very wary, very cautious vis-a-vis artificial intelligence?
Yes, although we have to distinguish between different types of artificial intelligence, general artificial intelligence, the different types of learning, and those different embeddings. Artificial intelligence per se is not threatening unless we embed it into systems that have also the physical ability to perform certain actions. So it's probably a matter of over-testing before embedding them into certain systems that might cause harm. So the problem is not with artificial intelligence per se as an idea. It's more about what kind of technical systems we embed it in.
But we already, for example, in the laws of war, we speak about autonomous lethal weapons. So this kind of autonomous system already enters the debate. And who can guarantee that maybe we won't have autonomous robots in the future, which they are going to determine their own movements in the future? Isn't this a threat that artificial intelligence presents for the human race?
Well, this is indeed a threat. The problem is, what are we comparing that to? In the sense that are humans necessarily more predictable in all circumstances, or in the same circumstances where they would be deployed, as opposed to those autonomous weapons? So, here we enter a very, let's say, uncertain field made of, statistics, of theories of technology and stuff. But I think the important question is always, what's the term of comparison? Are we asking these questions only with regards to artificial intelligence, or we are more concerned about generally losing control over certain types of actions carried out by whomever, be it artificial or non-artificial?
And also the role of emotions in this whole debate is very important. We know that machines, at least so far, we know there have been efforts in order to instill emotions to machines. But the question is, how do you see these efforts? And if you think this is a turning point for artificial intelligence to become not so artificial, but more humane intelligence?
Well, if that ever happens, absolutely yes. I mean, that would be probably yet another, anthropological revolution for us. We have been displaced from the center of our planet, the center of the universe, the center even of ourselves, in our conscience. Accepting that something else other than us might, have actionable consciousness, that, and even the ability to sympathize regardless of the specific input we make, it's going to prove, if ever happens, anthropologically very sound. But I am among those who don't think this will ever happen, unless we systematically misunderstand something about the nature of life in the universe. But here we enter very philosophical discussions. If we want to be kind of precise, even biologists aren't completely sure about what life is. I mean, they try to define it according to certain functions. But if we think also about extraterrestrial life, extrasolar life in other galaxies, or things that we might not know, who are we even to define what is alive?
Take me to a different string of your wide personality, because I know you're also a musician. And as you're talking now about this kind of behind-the-lines scheme when it comes to artificial intelligence, music also flies in the air, and we don't see music. So the question is, do you think that your music studies actually helps you in understanding more these kind of metaphysical also aspects, as you say now, of artificial intelligence?
Well, that's a sort of a hard question, in the sense that I don't know if I can relate it to my inspections of artificial intelligence, but I can probably relate it to the difficulties of and added value of interpretation in law. If you think about the fact that when it comes to classical music, for example, most of us, well, most of them, because I'm no longer playing actively, but keep reiterating compositions written by others, and still somebody finds enjoyment and interest in listening to their performances as if they were something somehow anew. Well, think about this in terms of law. You have a text, but the possible interpretations of that text too are potentially uncountable, and people are going to find new ways to argue about any single element of that line. So you can think about discourse as something in music, just as something in law. So again, I'm not sure, I can't find immediate right now parallelisms with artificial intelligence or the inspection thereof.
You mentioned something before that I caught it and I want to underline. You spoke about getting enjoyment from a musical piece, for example. And now we know that also robots can compose musical pieces. So what is the fine line that distinguishes between a human creation and a robotic creation? Is it only enjoyment? Because somebody could argue that equally, through a robotic creation, we can get some enjoyment.
I guess you can't distinguish them by style. Most of the times we hear, in the news, for example, well, this robot has written this piece in Mozart's style or in Beethoven's styles, and it's absolutely impressive that they can. Also, some other styles like Scriabin or some other, some French, for example, composers are probably more difficult than Mozart to replicate as per their style for a number of reasons. Not melodic, but mostly harmonic. But anyway, the key distinction is that AI can at this time replicate one style, but or at least it's hard for us to understand whether they might have a style. I don't think there's something so recognizable in their way of composing that might create a movement around it, or but again, probably we are again thinking in very anthropocentric terms and thinking, well, we tend to want to create a line of followers.
But this is also the question regarding also law. Aren't we bound to think in an anthropocentric way?
Absolutely. I mean, even if you think about
who stands in the center of the universe, if not the human species?
Well,
or not? Maybe not. You will tell us.
Well, I mean, lawyers have gracefully started to understand that humans are just very peripheral. Of course, most of the legal frameworks are designed for our lives to work somehow. I don't think that lawyers claim that the law is something, or at least that the majority of us claim that the law, is such a perfect creation of anything. It's simply for us to mostly to arrange or prevent the solution to disputes, and possibly I would say that law is one of the most anthropocentric enterprise of human beings. It is designed, I would say, mostly to accommodate our lives. While if you think about architecture, for example, it has a function beyond the simple resolution. Then, when you think about human rights, of course, there are aspirations about defining ourselves and our function with each other. But the laws just recently started to engage with broader questions, for example, of our relationship with the cosmos or other possible species, also on the microscopic scale, not necessarily on the macroscopic one. I think it's the next journey of lawyers, but for that we will need different kind of lawyers, I suppose. I'm afraid also we'll need lawyers with a background, in wider philosophical questions, but also in engineering.
That's why this series tries to give this wider perspective to the audience, and our viewers and listeners, I think they get some nice glimpses now of this interesting discussion we're having with Riccardo. Yes. Riccardo, are you in favor or against limiting artificial intelligence?
Neither, in the sense that, again, I think, so discussion number one, what are we comparing the threats and the risk to? Are we deploying different standards for humans and non-humans when it comes to the risk they create to each other and to so that's the first question. Second question, or second issue, artificial intelligence is an extremely broad definition. I think we should start discussing more about what kind of algorithms learning we can accept, and especially we have to start shifting the whole narrative around risk, accepting that complete prediction is probably impossible, but it has always been probably impossible. I mean, I think it's typically human to expect that we have the ability to know how things will work.
And we master knowledge and we master our fates. And we can
yeah, but in a very wide range of circumstances, already without and far before artificial intelligence, this was more an assumption than something really true. I'm not going now into the philosophy of quantum physics and all this stuff, but even at a macroscopic level, lawyers have long grappled with this as an assumption that I'm not completely sure was near the truth.
How has your communication been with the scientists, with the more applied sciences? Because you come from the legal world, do they understand you?
They're extremely rigid, and that's why I've decided most recently to also start studying engineering in Politecnico in Italy, di Milano. I think it's extremely important for them to trust that we are not just there to constrain them. Most of the times when you become part of a large interdisciplinary group of people, some of whom might be engineers, for example, or clinicians, but I would say engineers is particularly prominent, the issue here. They tend to believe that lawyers are there to either constrain them or to create problems or to tell them they shouldn't test something or they shouldn't try something or they shouldn't apply something or market something, or anyway they feel lawyers are there to constrain their action or to prevent them from furthering their discovery. If they are scientists.
So you have to gain their trust first. It's like a psychological exercise also.
Yes, but it's also a disciplinary one in the sense that I have learned the hard way that unfortunately most of them are not necessarily interested in general in bridging the gap too much, in the sense that they don't want to feel too much constrained, and if you are there to try to embed the law by design, as they say, within the technology, it's probably easier that you yourself, make the first step and try to understand how the technology works from the inside. So it's probably easier for lawyers to bridge that gap than to expect them to do so for us. And that's why we need not tech lawyers, but actually lawyers and technologists. I mean, people with double background, people who are serious about studying, training in both areas, and willing to contribute to both. But then, apart from dialoguing with them as professionals, then there is an whole epistemic issue there about how we know what we know. But there is also a professional, issue in practical terms. Where are we going to publish our findings? What are the methodologies? Because in most of these cases, either the projects are engineering-led, and so they are going to, to publish their findings into engineering journals and with engineering methodologies or computer scientist methodologies, or you will have lawyers publishing their things in their own journals with our own style, and this is going the opposite way. We don't really have yet, but I hope, I will be one of the, one of the builders, but with many others, hopefully,
one of the pioneers, maybe.
That's a very, responsibilizing word, but I just hope to be one of the seeds together with many others in really finding methodologies and publication outlets that can accommodate the complexity of these questions. And most recently, for example, I was involved in smart collaborative robots, so research about robots that rather than staying there while humans work here, they collaborate with us.
You mentioned about the solitude of law, the difficulty of law to cooperate, to speak maybe with other disciplines. Do you think that this is an inherent problem of the legal science, or it's an inherent problem of all times, maybe, of the isolation we live as human beings, that we don't necessarily, because in the academia all the time we speak about interdisciplinarity, but now you exemplify that it's not always easy. So the question is, why is it not so easy? Who has a problem?
All of us. So problem number one, technology goes fast, but academic careers, especially in law, are built around the recognition of an expertise which is extremely outdated. In this sense, in our field, you are considered an expert very slowly, in the sense that you publish something, maybe also smart, but something, and then you're not really seeing well if you start bordering too much, going around with topics. You need to stick to it, publish about it in any possible way until after 15-20 years you're going to be recognized as an expert. Technology doesn't hold to this to this timing, to this pace, to this sort of academic careering, I would say. Problem number one. But problem number two, when it comes to loneliness, we can, sociologically, yes, I think we all have a huge issue of substantial loneliness, not in terms of not being around with others, but not being able to share, commonalities and common destinies particularly. And from a disciplinary perspective, probably it's even worse in the sense that lawyers, differently from other disciplines, lack external validity, in the sense that, okay, we can have a text, but a text is something human, and then we can start interpreting it. Of course, there are rules, but anything in our field is eternally contested and contestable. It's hard to claim that there is something out there that humans can observe without touching it. Then, of course, also in physics recently with quantum stuff, we started to question the ability of humans to see without altering reality. But anyway, definitely, when it comes to research, very practically, lawyers lack external validity, in the sense that it's hard to claim that something, is there and will remain there, and it's going to be like that for everyone. It's based on authority, on the authority of those who say something. It's not based on the, external, objective, third-party, out there authority of the claim. And this is fundamental when you interact with technology people that tend to believe that in any field, like in theirs, there is something, at least maybe not reached, but reachable external truth. So they are discovering something that is out there and they can know. And when the first issue, for example, when you talk with them, is that they ask you, like, is this compliant, is this liable, is this whatever, and you reply, well, it depends on, and then you start with anything that depends, and then somebody else might come and say, well, but actually, and this is a constant, while they seek something close to certainty, because they are also pursuing that in their research, something that is out there, external, and potentially reachable. at least for a while.
One last question. In the Alan Turing Institute, you're dealing now with bioethics. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you do now and whether you think that law and morality should go together?
Right. Well, more than bioethics, generally it's biometrics, which is, yeah, there are also probably bioethics implications, but generally I would say that the issue with biometrics is the extent to which we normalize things that previously weren't needed. And this issue from a legal perspective comes very evidently with consent. Most of the times we say, well, but we are complying with this data protection law, this AI law, this liability, whatever, non-discrimination, because we have gathered consent. But if we ask people to access a service, maybe a necessary one, not just a smartphone, but something that life-saving or essential for their lives, and we tell them that they wouldn't access that service, for example, think about border controls, without undergoing certain biometrics procedures, we have to question whether that is actual consent. Especially if what we ask them to undergo or to release is something that they didn't need previously to undergo or release.
Since this series is about also international law, do you think we are going to see an international convention on artificial intelligence?
If I think about...
I promised the previous question to be the last one, but...
Yeah, well, this is probably the hardest. No, I don't really know, obviously, but if I think about the state of the art in cyber security negotiations, for example, how long states have tried to reach consensus over probably more basic issues of cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, cyber espionage, and they are still there trying to negotiate, and there is no way probably out. No, I don't think we'll reach anything binding. Then we have to question whether really bindingness at this point is what, if you also think about how many international legal regimes are binding, but they don't really work on the field. So this language of bindingness and convention is also probably a bit outdated. I think it's more useful to think about lawyers being able to encode certain rules or expectations of norms of behavior into the behavior of machines. We have to stop thinking about law probably as something we can enforce as humans alone over situations, and probably something we need to embed into systems, retaining obviously ultimate control. I mean, the ultimate switch off that should always remain human, or of some other species if we go too far in the universe.
Riccardo, thank you very much for this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, it was Riccardo Segate here in central London in this episode of the BUL Emerging Law Voices. We bid you farewell, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the series.